I'm Jessie, the Sleepy Koala, and welcome to a reading vlog. Now, I'm actually a little bit late on the mark with this reading vlog because I wasn't actually planning to do it, and then very out of the blue decided, what if I do a reading vlog while reading the Darker Shade of Magic series? Because I'm halfway through the second book and I have so many thoughts and feelings so far. So, you know, I'm currently at the point where I'm halfway through the second book, so I am kind of skipping a bit at the beginning, but I do go over book 1, A Darker Shade of Magic, in my April wrap-up. So if you would like to know more about my thoughts about that book in particular, I highly suggest heading on over there to take a look. It is one of the more in-depth reviews that I give in that wrap-up, that's for sure. It helps that I have been buddy reading this series with Chatty the Mad Chatter and Sylvan Princess over on Discord. So I have a place where I have contained all of my thoughts, so I have probably more notes than I normally do. I have also been tabbing the second book because I just started getting to bits that I'm like, I really want to remember this for later. So I grabbed out my tabs and have been tabbing this book as I have been going along, which just really helps with remembering what it is I want to talk about and what it is that is fascinating me about this book, to the point that I feel the need to have to tab it to remember it later. So because of this, I thought, what if I do a reading vlog and then I can get all of these thoughts that are swirling around my brain out onto camera to be like collated for as I go along these books. I will say that this vlog is going to be full spoilers for this entire series, so it will of course be split up by book, but I might reference previous books when I get to the later ones. But if you don't want spoilers for the Darker Shade of Magic series, this is not the video for you. I highly recommend you click on one of my other videos instead. A place to start though is a wrap-up of my thoughts of the first book. I was anticipating this book as a 5-star read this year, and it was not a 5-star read. This was like a 3.5-star read, and I was highly disappointed by the first book because I had such high expectations of it. So that really did color my view of the book as I read it and as I was taking notes for it, so that I could like put it in my videos to talk about. I do think that the book had some problems. There was some convoluted plot that made absolutely no sense as to why it had to happen that way, and really it would have gone so much better if like it hadn't gone the convoluted route, but okay, I guess that's the choices that were made. I also was not the biggest fan of the character of Lila because she did feel very shallow, YA two-dimensional edgy type character, like edgy female type character, and I wasn't super into that. But the world building I thought was on point. I was fascinated by the different Londons, I was fascinated by the magic, and I really enjoyed learning more about the world and the overall setting that the book was in. The one part of the world building that I was disappointed about was the fact that we never get to Black London after hyping it up so much in the first book. So I was a little bummed out about that because everyone's been going on about Black London the whole book, and then it finally seems like we're gonna go there and then we don't. Was a bit of a letdown. That definitely was a bit of a letdown. I did also find the fight scenes to be a little bit boring, and like this kind of ties back into the plot in a way because Kel has to win. Kel has to be the good guy, the victor, who wins at the end of the day. But instead of him coming out of these fight scenes as like the actual victor because he is stronger, he is smarter, he has done some trickery, like something that actually involves effort and planning or just like thought, it's all just kind of luck, and he kind of wins the day because he has to win the day, not because he deserves to win the day. So I did find the fight scenes to be a bit dull as well. Some good things that I liked about the first book was Holland as a character. I thought he was really fascinating in the situation he was in, where he didn't have free will, but he did still have to live completely consciously and like go through all of his actions, even if they were not ones that he chose to make. And that is a horrifying concept. I do wish it had been explored more before, you know, he dies at the end of the book. But I did really like Holland as a character. The Dane twins were like fine villains. Like they were very obviously villains from the get-go, and I was looking forward to seeing how they were involved with everything, with the Vitari Stone, and just how everything would come together. I also really liked Kell as a character. I thought he was very interesting, and something that I do want to explore more and kind of wish we saw more of in the first book was these hints that he is both part of the royal family, but also the slave of the royal family, and that like dichotomy between these two positions that he is stuck in. And it's touched on a few times, and that's just fascinating to me. So I really am looking forward to exploring that further. That is about it that I want to go into with the first book, A Darker Shade of Magic. And now let's move on to the book that I'm actually reading at the moment, A Gathering of Shadows. So far I am about halfway through this book. We have had the setup where we find out that Lila is now on the pirate ship, the Night Spire, with Alucard as the captain. We find out that Kell has been kind of kept more of a prisoner now than he was before because of the outcomes of the first book and the consequences for what he has done. And we find out more about his relationship with Rai, and also about these upcoming games that are being planned. I've just hit the point where the royals have started arriving for the games, and it seems like the plot's probably going to pick up from here, whereas up till now we've had a lot of setup for this book and set up for like where things are going. Lila is finally back in London, so there's going to be the eventual crossover where she meets up with Kell again, and that will be a very interesting meeting to see for reasons that I will go into in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about Kell, and I want to again touch on this idea that he is a prisoner within his family, because this book kind of dials it up to 11. At the end of the last book, he was kind of held responsible for a lot of what happened on, I think they call it the Black Night, and he has lost the trust of the king and queen, and he has a more strained relationship with his brother Rai, and a lot of that comes from the fact that Kell brought Rai back to life, and they are now tethered together. But Kell is now much more under lock and key than he was before. He is constantly followed by guards, and when he is traveling between the different Londons, he has strict rules about where he has to return to, because his guards will be there waiting for him because he has that short of a leash. And we see it in Kell's mentality and like in his thinking about how difficult this has been for him. There are some like really good quotes about how Kell feels, and also about how the people around him treat him and his role within the family. The first one is about the King Maxim. Kell raised a brow. Was Maxim actually worried for his safety? But then, as he reached for the letter, he saw the flicker of distrust in the king's eyes, and his spirits sank. Maxim kept grudges like scars. They faded by degrees, but always left a mark. This next quote is about Kell's feelings about his situation and like where he is currently at. He had always been watched, but he'd felt more confined in the past 4 months than in the near 20 years he'd served the crown. Kell used to feel like a possession. Now he felt like a prisoner. And this one is to do with Kell's relationship with his family, or with the king in particular, and the way that Kell seems to be viewing the situation of what the king sees in him and who the king seems to think Kell is. They'll want to see you, the king had said, and Kell had understood. When Maxim said you, he didn't mean Kell the person, he meant Kell the Antari. He bristled. Why did he feel like a trophy? Or worse, a trinket? Like, Kell obviously feels really trapped in his situation, and even when he has the means of escape or the opportunity to escape, he returns to that situation because of like the love of his brother and that feeling that he kind of has to. But Kell definitely has PTSD at this point. He has flashbacks about what happened with the Danes and with Rye. It's implied that Rye is not the only one who has been having nightmares, and it can be felt through the bond that Kel and Rye have. So Kel's mental state right now is really bad, and he is in this situation where he is kind of a prisoner as well, and a prisoner to the people who should care about him most. And that is just a fascinating position for a character to be in, I think. Like, I really look forward to seeing how this progresses and in what direction Kel goes from here. Will he reconcile with his family, and will things start getting better on that front? Or will this entire situation push him further away and push him into doing maybe something that is more drastic, burning of the bridges that he currently has with the people around him? And Kel's mental state and his situation is playing a factor into his relationship with his brother and this bond that they have between them. While it is keeping Rye alive and giving him a second chance, as Rye says, it does have consequences for the brothers in the way that they can feel each other's emotions through the bond, and this is kind of reverberating between them and making things more tense. And all I can think of is like stories of people at the start of COVID who lived with their partner in like a tiny studio or one-bedroom house, and then suddenly they could not leave. And it doesn't matter how much you love someone, you need to be able to have space from them, and neither Rye nor Kel can have space from each other. And Kel says this at the beginning of the book. What was happening to them? They'd never been cruel to each other before, but pain and pleasure weren't the only things that seemed to transfer with the bond. Fear, annoyance, anger, all plucked at the binding spell, reverberating between them, amplifying. Rye had always been fickle, but now Kel felt his brother's ever-shifting temperament, the constant oscillation, and it was maddening. Space meant nothing. They could be standing side by side or Londons apart. There was no escape. More and more, the bond felt like a chain. And Kel knows just how much this bond has, like, taken away any freedom he could have. Like, he acknowledges that to himself. Kel would never be free, no matter how far he fled. He'd given up freedom with his life when he handed it to Rye. But the bond also helps, like, Rye know what Kel needs as well. He knows how much Kel has been training in the basement and just how much he needs some way to let off that energy he has, hence why he puts him into the tournament. And Kel, even though he initially disagrees with like what Rye is trying to do, sees Rye's point and it then does kind of agree with it and goes along with it because he too knows that he needs this. And they just have a very fascinating relationship because like they are at odds at the moment, but they obviously still love each other like very dearly and like want to do what's best for each other, even if at the same time they are doing like little jabs and aren't on the best of terms. On the other side of the story, moving away from Kel and Rye and the royal family, of course we have Lila, who I didn't particularly like that much in the first book because she did feel very shallow, very edgy protagonist, and I didn't just get much depth from any of that. She just kind of seemed to be edgy because that was cool more than anything. Like, she has this tragic backstory, but it just didn't feel like the tragic backstory led into how she acted all that much, and like there was this disconnect, whereas this book really leans into the fact that she is traumatized and has gone through a lot of trauma in her life, and it has given her these unhealthy coping mechanisms that lead her to push people away and to not let herself have a good thing because the fear that something will go wrong, and like if she opens herself, she will be hurt. So it's the same thing as book one was going for, but actually going into depth with it and tying things together in a way that just leads to a deeper character instead of an edgier character. And I really like that. Like, we've got Lila on the ship and she loves being there And like she does keep having these moments where her brain is trying to tell her to cut it and run because she's scared to have a good thing for herself. She's scared of the consequences it might have if she opens herself to that and becomes vulnerable. And the thing Lila's really bad at is being vulnerable with anyone, let alone herself. But she does start opening up in this book, particularly with Captain Alucard, who I really like their dynamic and their relationship. And I like that Lila has someone that she can talk to, and like it is moving past just being the superficial talk that probably happened between them to start with. And like they are both probing into each other's secrets, into each other's past. And Lila finds this really hard, but yet she doesn't run away. She hasn't cut her losses, and she hasn't really pushed the captain away either. Like even after he probes a little bit too deeply for her, she still goes back to him to talk more, to follow him, to find out more about his life. And like they do have a really nice dynamic. And like I love their flirtatiousness as well. I think that the two of them together would actually work really nicely, which is a shame that I think this book is setting up a love triangle. I don't like love triangles, and honestly, I don't think that Lila and Kel had much romantic connection in the first book. They've done a lot of pining over each other in this book, but pining isn't chemistry. And I don't think they had that romantic chemistry in book one, even though there was that weird random kiss. But Alucard and Lila definitely have on-page chemistry that we are seeing like before our eyes, and it is like really fun to watch, and I do really hope it goes somewhere. So I am kind of sad because I do think this is going to turn into a love triangle, and like she's gonna end up with Kel because Kel's the main character. And that's really all I think they currently have going for them, is that Lila and Kel are the main characters, so I've got to get them together. But it would be quite a refreshing change to see Lila not actually get with Kel as the main character, or if she does, like it would just be nice if the book committed to like actually developing proper chemistry between them before they do get together. And like sure, use the pining that they've both been doing as like the jumping point for it, but I'm just gonna be annoyed if the book just goes, nah, she's gotta get with Kel because Kel's the main character and they've been pining for each other. So that's it, right? That's all you need. You just need pining. And no, you need more than pining. Or I would like really hope the book to have more than just pining. But to get back to Lila by herself for a moment, because I did get really off topic, I do like how much Baron is brought up in this book and how much she reflects back on the loss of Baron and how that did affect her, even though she tried to keep her distance from him. And I think that that does play into how she interacts with the people in this book. And like she is changing and she is growing. And there is a great paragraph of growth for her as well, which I really found intriguing. She used to hate people like him, people who gave up something good, shucked warm meals and solid roofs as if they didn't matter. But then Baron died, and Lila realized that in a way she had done the same thing. Run away from what could have been a good life, or at least a happy one. Because it wasn't enough to be happy, not for Lila. She wanted more, wanted an adventure. She used to think that if she stole enough, the want would fade, the hunger would go away, but maybe it wasn't that simple. Maybe it wasn't a matter of what she didn't have, of what she wasn't, but what she was. Maybe she wasn't the kind of person who stole to stay alive. Maybe she just did it for the thrill. And that scared her, because it meant she didn't need to do it, couldn't justify it, could have stayed at the stone's throw, could have saved Baron's life. It was a slippery slope, that kind of thinking, one that ended in a cliff, so Lila backed away. Like, she's not there yet. She still, like, hasn't accepted that, like, yeah, she could have had a good life, and she chose to keep that distance. And like that is all tied up in trauma and hard for her to separate, but she is starting to do that separation. And I hope this doesn't lead to Lila just feeling bad, like she could have saved Baron if like she had stayed at the Stone Store, because I think Baron probably would have died regardless. But it is good to see that she is starting to process the way that she thinks and the way that she treats situations, and not just go with her first instinct, which is the instinct born out of years and years of living on the streets and the trauma that comes with that. She is starting to see that she can have good things, and she just needs to push through that urge to run and accept that she can have good things. So I really like that she's stayed with the Night Spire and didn't listen to any of those instincts, and like she is starting to process this stuff. That is really good. I've really enjoyed that about Lila's character, and I really hope this book keeps it up. Well, now that I've spent like 40 minutes of filming to talk about like 3 different things on a video that is meant to be multi-parts, and this is just part 1, I'm doing really well. But I just had so many thoughts going through my brain about Kel's situation, about his relationships with the King and Queen, with Rye and Lila, and her relationship with Alucard. And I just needed to get them out into a camera so that I could put it all together and then at the end have all of my thoughts fleshed out. So this is the wrap up for the first half of the book that I'm currently reading, and I will be back with you later with more of an update for this reading vlog. Hello, I am back again. I have now finished the second Darker Shades of Magic book, A Gathering of Shadows, and I have some thoughts. I have quite a few thoughts about this book. I will be going into spoilers with the description, so yeah, if you don't want spoilers for this book, then click off now. It's not the video for you. This book had so much character stuff in it, and I liked the plot. I know it doesn't seem relevant to everyone. I liked it, but I really, really liked the character work in this book. We have got characters that are so much more fulfilling than they were in the first book. They're so much deeper and complex, and I am just loving the exploration of these characters and the character growth that they are trying to go through. And in this book, nobody really grows. Everyone just kind of falls apart. And I really think that probably every single person in this book really needs to talk to a therapist, because their lives aren't going well and their mental state is just down the drain. But to start us off, let's talk about Lila again, because I know I talked about her ages before and how she was starting to get some character growth and some negative traits that like were hindering her, and this like kind of continues on for the rest of the book. Like we get hints that she's owning up to things and that she's starting to realize the consequences of her actions, but yet she still has those ingrown beliefs or instincts to run, to be reckless, to throw her life around. And we see that a lot in this book. She's getting so much closer to like fully accepting what happened with Baron in the first book, and we get hints of her acknowledging that she had something good with Baron and that she kind of gave it up deliberately and then kept pushing it away when she could have had something really good. And she is starting to realize that. But this is balanced against her recklessness and her impulsivity, which puts her into this tournament, which is such a bad idea. But just seeing how impulsive she is, how quick she is to start a fight, and how much she wants to get into trouble. And she seems to have this urge to almost put herself in danger and to keep doing things that are dangerous when she doesn't have to. It's the exact same thing as when she was pushing Baron away. Like, she is choosing a road where things are more likely to fall apart when she is being given the option of something good, because accepting that thing that is good is just not something that she is good at doing, and is something that she needs to get better at doing. And she does seem to get a bit better in this book, but she still sabotages her chances with being on the Night Spire, and Alucard gets rid of her because of what she has done and because she has entered this tournament, and he won't risk his crew because of her recklessness. And Lila just seems torn between these two different parts of her. One part that seems to want to start getting better, and the other part that is just so much stronger and holding on so tight and saying, no, make the bad decisions, put yourself in danger. And that just comes from the trauma that she has dealt with her entire life of growing up on the streets and not being able to trust people and not being able to trust that she's in a good situation. But one of the heartbreaking quotes that I came across to do with Lila and starting to recognize things about what is good in her life and what she has deliberately done to kind of lose that goodness. There's this great quote about the stone's throw. Even from the outside, they looked nothing alike, and yet this place tugged on her bones with the same peculiar gravity she'd always felt back home. Home. She'd never thought of the stone's throw that way when she was there, but now it was the only word that fit. Only it wasn't the building she longed for. Not really. Like, she knows. She knows what she had, and she knows what she lost, and like that does seem to have been a wake-up call, but she just has to work through the rest of her shit first before anything's really gonna get better for her. And I do hope to see in the next book some sort of repercussions for her being in the tournament, because that didn't come up this book whatsoever. And I'm slightly concerned with the way that this book ended, it having such a focus on what Holland was doing and taking Kell to White London, that a lot of the stuff with the tournament will be left. And like, I want both Lila and Kell to have consequences for their actions, because it was dumb to enter this tournament. It was really dumb on both of their parts. There's two scenes that I really like, and then I will move on from Lila, or at least like Lila by herself. But one of them just shows how much she can fall back into destructive patterns, and it's when she's talking to Alucard and she pulls out these stolen gems. So this is what you do instead of dancing, he said. Haunt the docks like some sailor's ghost. Well, only when I get bored of doing this. She pulled a fist from her pocket and opened it to reveal a collection of jewelry, coins, and trinkets. Alucard shook his head, exasperated. Why? Lila shrugged. Because it was familiar, she might say, and she was good at it. Plus, the contents of people's pockets were far more interesting in this London. Like, she just can't help herself. She just continues to do this dumb shit that's gonna get her caught and gonna get her in trouble, but she just keeps doing it because she seems to have this compulsion to give in to this destructive side of her, and that destructive side is probably really hard to fight against. So it is good to see that she's like starting to get there, and I want to see her get more on the side where she actually has some sensible thoughts and doesn't make dumb decisions all the time. But I also want to see like the character moments in between and see how she grows to get there, because she can't just switch it. She can't just turn on a switch and like get better all of a sudden. It's gonna be a dragged out thing of her like learning to get better, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But we're not there yet. The other scene that I really liked is one where Lila is talking to Kell, and she's talking about running away. And I think this is a good scene to show like some of the strength and growth that she has had as a character. But Kell, she said, sobering, don't do what I did. You're going to have to be more specific. She thought of Baron, the silver watch in the bottom of her coat. If you decide to leave, when you decide to leave, don't do it without saying goodbye. That's something she regrets, and that's something she's learning from. So it is good to see her learning, but she's just doing it very slowly. Oh my god, that went on for a very long time. Okay, this video is going to be cut, I think. So I was originally gonna do both second and third book in one, but considering I think the total raw file of my first video is 40 minutes, and this one is already at about 20 minutes of recording, and I've gone through one thing that I wanted to talk about, I think I might just cut it so that, you know, I do one for each book instead of like a combined one. So this reading vlog's gonna just be a two-parter about A Gathering of Darkness, I think. Let's move on to Prince Rai, who also desperately needs a therapist and someone to talk to because his mental health is going down the brain. And he is not doing very well going off some of these chapters. Like, he is trying so hard to be this happy-go-lucky figure, and he is just dying on the inside. And like, we see this throughout the book with him like self-medicating with alcohol and like doing dumb shit, like putting his brother into a tournament where he really shouldn't be. And it's just more of that recklessness that comes from like, you're drowning in everything. Like, it just doesn't seem like it will matter if you do a dumb thing because you're in so much pain already. How much more pain can it cause you? And that really feels like where Rye is at currently. Like, Rye feels so responsible for everything that happened in the first book with Holland and with Rye taking the pendant and being possessed and everything that came afterwards, and Kel saving him. And he hates the fact that he has this bond that ties him to his brother, and that now his brother feels the need to walk on eggshells in life just so that he can protect Rye. There are just like pages of amazing quotes that I could pull up for like what's going on with Rye and his mental state, but that would take a long time, and I probably shouldn't read that much of the book on camera. But at least these are some of like the top tier quotes that kind of look at Rye's mental state and like his mental health. And you really see like how damaged he is from everything that happened and just how bad it is in his head because of everything that is going on and because of this bond that he doesn't want. And he doesn't blame Kel for it either. He knows that his brother was just trying to help. They both seem like they are more worried for the other person than themselves, and it is just causing so much like heartache and mental strain on both of them to do this when neither of them blame each other and they're just worried about each other. And you really, really can see this in Rye's chapters. Do you remember what I told you after that night about why I took the pendant from Holland? Kel nodded. You wanted strength. I still want it, Rye whispered. Every day, I wake up wanting to be a stronger person, a better prince, a worthy king. That want, it's like a fire in my chest. And then there are these moments, these horrible icy moments when I remember what I did. To myself, to you, to my kingdom, and it hurts. More than dying ever did. There are days when I don't feel like I deserve this. He tapped the soul seal. I deserve to be... He trailed off, but Kel could feel his brother's pain, as though it had been a physical thing. And then on the next page, we have, Rye didn't need his protection, not anymore, and he'd only told a partial truth when he had said they both needed this. The whole truth was Rye needed it more. Because Kel had given him a gift he did not want, could never repay. He had always envied his brother's strength, and now, in a horrible way, it was his. He was immortal, and he hated it. And that part of that chapter just goes on and on in Rye's mental state. It looks at how he blames himself. It has, like, suicidal ideations in it. He is not doing good with any of this, and it will be interesting to see where his character goes like into the next book and how he deals with that. The other part for Rye in this book is his relationship with Alucard and how they used to be together, and Alucard broke Rye's heart, so Kel kicked him out of London and said, don't come back. And I must say, I was kind of wondering if something like this was going to be the case when we were getting the scenes of Kel and Rye being like, oh no, he's coming back. But then we see him and he's like, he's a kind of alright dude. Like, he's pretty chill. Like, he and Lila have great chemistry and great bonding, and like really enjoyed reading the two of them together. So I really want to know more about what's going on there between Rye and Alucard, because Alucard clearly still seems to be into him. And like, was he just toying with Rye to begin with? Like, what exactly happened? And the bit at the end where Rye is in pain because Kel is in pain and Alucard is just trying to comfort him, it's like, okay, where's this going? What's gonna happen here? Because it really is like that protectiveness coming through to try and look after Rye when he is in such a vulnerable state. But Kel just hates Alucard. like so much. It would just be nice to know a little bit more about what happened in their past to bring around this situation that we have here. Speaking of relationships though, we have to move into Kel and Lila, which I was not super on board with through most of the first book and like the first half of this book, because it just hadn't been built up. Like, I'm not against the ship of them. I just didn't feel it. Like, there wasn't anything there that gave me like the romance feels and the like I'm super into watching you guys get together feels. Like, it just wasn't really there. They just kind of had friendship energy. But then second half of this book, wow, I really got that connection between them, and like it really jumped out at me. And I do actually think like a bunch of the pining did actually pay off into their eventual meeting on the battlefield and trying to have this conversation while doing this match against each other. And then of course we have Lila dressing up in a dress for like the first time ever so that she can go impress Kel and like get his attention. And like I just love the scenes of them interacting again and opening up to each other, like Kel talking about like wanting to run away and Lila giving terrible advice, I would say, of being like, yeah, just do that. Just run away. That's fine. People do that, don't they? That's a normal instinct. No, Lila, no, it's not. But they opened up to each other, which was really great to see. And just when they eventually kissed, like I was very into it by that point. I thought that the chemistry was there, the romance between them was there, and like had finally kind of bloomed on the page. And it had kind of happened through a absence makes the heart grow fonder type situation, which I really wasn't expecting to pay off like it did, but I am totally there now. I think the fact that like Alaka is involved with Rai as well, like very much helps me go towards Lila and Kel being together instead of Lila and Alaka being together, because I really like the idea of Alaka and Rai and I want to know what happened there, and I'm always down for a gay ship. But I just absolutely love some of the language used when they do finally kiss, and just the way it is described is really well done. I think they turned, caught up in another dance, and then he had her against the frost-lace wall. Her breath hitched, and her nails dug into his skull. She sank her teeth into his bottom lip, drawing blood, and gave a wicked laugh, and still he kissed her. Not out of desperation, or hope, or for luck, but simply because he wanted to. Saints, he wanted to. He kissed her until the night cold fell away, and his whole body sang with heat. He kissed her until the fire burned up the panic, and the anger, and the weight in his chest, until he could breathe again, and until they were both breathless. Like, I just really liked that description. I thought it was really well written. I will say, I do think that Kel and Lila getting together right now is probably a really bad idea. Neither of them are in a good place, and I feel like they would just feed into each other quite a bit. As much as I'm like, yeah, cool, I'm behind this ship now. I'm like, yeah, they should get some therapy first. This is the theme of this book, is like everyone should get some therapy. Speaking of Kel and people who are having a bad time of it, he doesn't end this book super well, and I would very much like to explore why. We've had, like, in the first book there were hints of this, and in the second book it was much clearer about how he both is and isn't part of the royal family. And it just gets so much worse in this book. Like, he gets put basically under house arrest by the king because the king doesn't want him at the games. He's followed around by guards all the time, and he's just trapped. And part of why Rai put him in the games is to try and help him get out some of that energy that's come from being trapped away like this. Like, it doesn't help. It doesn't make things better. In the end, like, things are still shitty afterwards. And Kel's family life it doesn't get better just because he was able to let off some steam, and he realizes this. And he just hates being in this position. Like, he asks Tyrion whether the king and queen will ever forgive him, And when Tyrion asks whether he would prefer forgiveness or Rye's life, Kel, like, I think rightly responds that he shouldn't have to choose. And this all accumulates into like a scene at the end between the king and Kel, and I really liked this scene. I thought the scene was very powerful and showed just how much Kel was at his wit's end with all of it, and like trying to deal with this situation and feeling trapped and shut away and in a box and like he's going to burst. And he does kind of burst in front of the king. I have been loyal to this crown, to this family, my entire life. I have given everything I have, everything I am, and you treat me like this. I can't keep doing this. At least when you treated me like a son, I could pretend. But now, he shook his head. The queen treats me as a traitor, and you treat me as a prisoner. The king's look darkened. You made this prison, Kel, when you tied your life to Rise. Would you have had him die? Snapped Kel. I saved his life. And before you go blaming me for putting it in danger, we both know he managed that much himself. When will you stop punishing me alone for a family's worth of fault? You put both this whole kingdom in danger with your folly, but at least Rye is trying to atone, to prove he deserved my trust. All you've done. I brought your son back from the dead, shouted Kel, lunging to his feet. I did it knowing it would bind our lives, knowing what it would mean for me, what I would become, knowing that the resurrection of his life would mean the end of mine, and I did it anyway, because he is my brother, and your son, and the future king of Arns. Kel gasped for breath, tears streaming down his face. What more could I possibly do? I can't keep atoning, Kel whispered into the king's shoulder. I gave him my life, but you cannot ask me to stop living. He feels so trapped. And it's heart-wrenching to read and to see him trying, and like he's just not doing any good. And as he asks the king, what is he meant to do? What was his other option? Tyrion may have asked Kel earlier, would he prefer the king and queen's forgiveness or Rye's life? But I think the king also needs to consider, like, would he have preferred Kel to let Rye die? And that is an impossible question to answer. But yet, he is still punishing Kel for making that decision. And that just puts Kel in this awful spot that he needs to get out of. So I think it makes complete sense that Kel runs away to White London at the end of the book after everything that's happened, after the house arrest, after the guards, after being arrested. He's just had enough, and I cannot wait to see where this goes and to see if we get Dark Kel coming out of this, and whether he is just going rogue and things are gonna go so much further downhill and he is not gonna be the good guy in the next book. And I just want to see what happens emotionally with all of this. So much of this book, I'm like, I want to see the emotions. All the emotions are great. They're heart-wrenching and they hurt, and I just want to read them all. Well, that is it for the characters that I wanted to go through and to look at their character development, their character growth, just like where they are at in the second half of this book. It's been a really weird reading vlog because it ended up just being 2 parts of me reading the book in 2 halves and then talking to the camera for like 40 to 50 minutes. So I think this will be a long one. I would be surprised if many people get to the end. If you get to the end, give me a smiley face emoji, because why not? But I really enjoyed this book so much more than the first one. And I thought there was so much more depth to this one that could be explored. And I really, really liked looking at that. So hopefully the third one also has this sort of character depth to it. And then I can make another very long 2-parter reading vlog video, which I'm sure is what everybody wants to see. Thank you for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment down below to let me know your thoughts on the second book in the Darker Shade of Magic series. Did you like it? Did you not like it? I actually heard before reading this that this book was worse, so I was surprised to like it as much as I did. But let me know your favorite parts and your least favorite parts and just what you think overall. That's all for me today, so I will see you next time. Bye!